He screamed, "You made my son deaf." Like a rich man's anger could rewrite reality, but within 48 hours, what happened next reminded an entire town that dignity doesn't come from a last name. It comes from the truth you're brave enough to stand in. Welcome home. Family, though, if nobody's told you today, let me say it plain. You matter. Not your job title. Not your zip code. Not what you drive. You, and if you've ever been talked down to by someone who thought they were untouchable, this story is for you. Because stories like this don't happen in fairy tales. They happen in clean hallways with fluorescent lights. They happen in towns that look perfect on postcards, marina boats, manicured lawns, good morning smiles, while the ugliest decisions get made behind gates people assume are too expensive for consequences to enter. So breathe with me for a second. Let your shoulders drop and walk into this one like you're not just watching, like you're witnessing. And if you feel your chest tighten at the thought of someone being blamed because they are easy to blame, stay close, or if my voice still finds a home in your heart, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from, and which part of the story hit you the hardest. I believe this story found you today for a reason. Now, back to the moment everything changed. It was a rainy Tuesday in Port Washington, NY, United States, the kind where umbrellas turn inside out on Main Street and the sky sits low like it's listening. Inside the popular hospital in Port Washington, NY, United States, the air smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. A muted TV played daytime news. A toddler whined in a stroller. Rubber soles squeaked on polished floors. Near the pediatric wing, Stephanie Miller moved the way working people do when they're trying not to be seen. Efficient, quiet, careful, blue gloves. Keys clipped at her waist. A mop cart that looked heavier than it should. She wasn't performing kindness. She was living it. And sitting just off to the side was a little boy in a small suit jacket, eyes too serious for his age, a hearing device tucked behind his ear, catching what the world would give him and filtering the rest. Then the door swung open like somebody brought a storm inside. Randy Bain stepped in wearing a tailored suit and the kind of anger that expects the room to rearrange itself. Behind him, moving like a polished shield, came Alice Nelson, Billy Yates, and Charles Manuel, the co-workers who always show up when reputation needs witnesses. Randy's eyes landed on Stephanie, and his face did something sharp, like recognition trying to hide under rage that he raised a finger, voice cracking through the hallway. You made my son deaf." The lobby froze. Phones lifted that a nurse stopped mid-step like time had hit pause. Stephanie didn't argue. She didn't shrink. She stepped closer to the boy first, because that's what real care looks like, and she signed something gentle, two hands moving like a promise. Then she looked up at Randy and said, low enough that only the closest people could hear, "Lower your voice. He can still read your lips." And in that split second, Randy's anger flickered, because that wasn't the response of a stranger. That was a response of someone who already knew what happened, and who wasn't scared of him anymore. Phones rose like reflex. Not just one, either 3 different angles from the waiting room, a nurse near the nurse's station, a teenager by the vending machines who'd been bored 5 minutes ago and was wide awake now. Randy Bain's fingers stayed pointed, his voice still echoing off the glossy walls, and the hospital, usually a place where people whisper their fear, held its breath. You could feel the split happen in real time. Staff murmured under their masks, "Is that Randy Bain?" Hempstead Mansion people. His yelling at the janitor. Behind Randy, Alice Nelson, Billy Yates, and Charles Manuel shifted into motion like a practice team. Alice leaned in, soft voice, sharp eyes, trying to pull him back from the cliff. Billy scanned the crowd, clocking cameras, calculating headlines. Charles offered the tight, polite smile of someone trained to make problems look smaller than they are. Randy kept performing anyway, for witnesses, for the story he wanted to sell. His outrage wasn't just anger, it was a narrative. But Stephanie Miller didn't give him what he needed. She stayed angled toward the boy, shoulders relaxed, hands gentle. She signed again, slow, reassuring, like she was building a wall between him and the noise. The boy's gaze clung to her the way kids cling to the only calm in a storm. Somewhere down the hall, An administrator appeared, face tense, eyes darting toward Randy like he was a donor walking on glass. In hospitals, truth saves lives, but money keeps wings open. And everyone felt that tug-of-war. Then the first clip hit a local page. Port Washington billionaire screams a hospital janitor. Within minutes, it jumped towns, then counties, then New York. Stephanie slipped away before anyone could stop her, ducking into a supply closet that smelled like bleach and mop water. The door clicked shut, and only then did her breath break. Not a sob, just a shaky inhale like she'd been holding herself together with fingernails, because she'd been disposable before. People like Randy didn't invent that feeling. They inherited it. And if you've ever watched someone in power turn a working person into a scapegoat because it's convenient, stay close to this story. And if you choose to subscribe, don't do it for me. Do it like you're choosing not to look away. People like Stephanie survive when somebody decides they matter. Out in the hall, Alice stared at Randy like she'd just seen a stranger. "Randy," she whispered, shaken. "Why does she know your son's sign name?" The hallway hadn't exhaled yet. Stephanie stepped back out of the supply closet, composure stitched neatly back into place, and walked straight toward the boy. Not toward Randy. Not toward the cameras. Toward the child. She knelt so they were eye level. Her hands moved with quiet fluency, confident, unhurried. Not textbook stiff. Not hesitant. Natural. The boy's shoulders dropped. His fingers answered quickly, relief flickering across his small face like someone had finally turned on a light in a dark room. Two nurses exchanged a look. "How does she?" one whispered. "Since when does environmental services speak ASL like that?" The other murmured. Randy saw the shift and lunged for control. It was chemical exposure. He snapped, voice tight but measured now. "She was cleaning. My son reacted. That's what happened." Stephanie didn't rise to the accusation. She stayed kneeling, finishing her sentence to the boy before standing slowly. "Your son had a fever for 3 days," she said evenly. "He couldn't keep his balance. He told you things sounded far away before you ever stepped into this hospital." A pediatric nurse cleared her throat, flipping through intake notes on a tablet. "So, records show he arrived with advanced symptoms. This wasn't sudden." Randy's jaw flexed. "That's not what happened." Stephanie met his eyes, calm as still water. "That's what you told them to write." The words didn't echo. They landed, because this wasn't just a janitor talking back. This was someone who understood what silence costs. Stephanie had learned ASL long before Hempstead Mansion, learned it at a kitchen table, across from someone she loved, back when words weren't always available and patience was the only bridge. She knew how isolating quiet could be. She also knew when quiet was forced. Billy Yates leaned toward Charles Manuel, voice barely audible. "He's not mad at her," she whispered. Charles swallowed. He's terrified of what she knows. 2 years earlier, Hempstead Mansion, located in Port Washington, NY, United States, looked exactly like the kind of place people assume bad things can't happen. Tall iron gates, trimmed hedges sharp as rulers, windows glowing warm against the Long Island night. The kind of estate that hosted charity galas and hospital fundraisers. The kind where donors clink glasses and talk about community. Stephanie Miller moved quietly through the service hallway, folding monogrammed linens in the downstairs laundry room. The fabric felt too soft for hands that worked double shifts. Upstairs, the house carried sound in strange ways, echoes traveling along marble and glass. That's when she heard it. A child crying. Not the kind of cry that wants attention. The kind that's scared. Footsteps pounded overhead. A door slammed. Something heavy scraped across hardwood. Then Randy's voice, raw and cracking. "He can't hear me. Dad." His not responding. Silence. And then Michael Bain, calm, measured, practiced. The voice of a man who had chaired hospital boards and cut ribbon after ribbon. "We do not let this become a story." Stephanie froze where she stood. Randy's breathing was uneven. "We need to take him in." "We will," Michael replied. "But we handle it internally. We call the right people. We don't invite headlines. You understand me. There it was, the shift. Not fear for the boy. Fear for perception. Stephanie edged closer to the stairwell, heart hammering. Words drifted down like instructions being drafted. Donations. Board relationships. Keep it contained. We can't have speculation. She wasn't recording for revenge. She wasn't thinking about lawsuits or leverage. She was thinking about that cry. About how quickly powerful people can turn panic into strategy. If she spoke without proof, she'd be gone by morning. Blacklisted. Replaceable. If she stayed silent, a child might pay the price. Her hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. She pressed record. Upstairs, Michael's voice lowered. Colder now. If we have to blame staff, he said evenly, we will. The present snapped back like a rubber band. Randy closed the distance between them. Voice lowered now. Fury sharpened into accusation. You want money? Is that it? He hissed. Is this some kind of payout play? Stephanie didn't step back. Instead, she slowly peeled off her blue gloves, one finger at a time, and placed them neatly on top of the mop cart. No sudden moves. No trembling. Just deliberate calm. It felt like disarming a weapon. I want the truth to stop bleeding into innocent people, she said. Randy scoffed, but the sound lacked confidence. Stephanie reached into a pocket and pulled out her phone, the same cracked screen, the same device that had been quiet for 2 years. She tapped once, the whole way filled with a voice everyone in Port Washington recognized. Michael Bain. Measured. Controlled. We do not let this become a story. Then Randy's panic. Younger, rawer. He can't hear me. Dad! Static. Movement. And then the line that turned oxygen into glass. We'll blame staff. We'll say it was chemicals. We'll settle quietly if we have to. Silence swallowed the room. Alice Nelson's face drained to color. Billy Yates physically stepped back like the floor shifted under her heels. Charles Manuel stopped breathing through his mouth and swallowed hard. The boy looked up at Stephanie, confusion in his eyes but no fear. She knelt beside him again and signed gently. You're not in trouble. He nodded. And this is the part where people usually scroll away, because it's easier to watch comfort than consequences. But if you subscribe right here, let it mean something. A quiet promise that you'll stay with the truth even when it's uncomfortable, especially when the person telling it has the least power in the room. Outside, sirens wailed closer. Security hurried down the hall. An administrator reached toward Stephanie's phone. I'm going to need that device. Stephanie lifted her chin. Touch it, she said evenly, and it goes everywhere. By nightfall, it wasn't just Port Washington watching. The clip had outgrown the hospital walls. Billionaire screams at Janitor. Mansion audio leak raises questions. Port Washington scandal. Local pages turned into regional feeds. Regional feeds tipped into national curiosity. The Bain name, once polished and predictable, was now attached to a question mark. Inside the Port Washington, NY, United States Police Station, Police Chief Melanie Chen sat alone in her office with the lights dimmed and the video paused mid-frame. She didn't care about the shouting. She'd seen anger before. She rewound to the exact moment Stephanie stepped forward. Frame by frame. Randy's jaw, his eyes the flicker. That wasn't outrage. That was fear. Melanie Chen had built her reputation on something simple. Power didn't impress her. Not donations. Not last names carved into hospital wings. She'd shut down contractors who thought connections made them invisible. She'd reopened cases when politics said, let it go. And she recognized the look of someone who knew the truth had slipped out of its cage. She picked up her phone. Set up a meeting with Stephanie Miller, she said evenly. No press. No noise. Quiet. Across town, Stephanie sat on the edge of a bed in a small apartment that still smelled faintly of cleaning supplies no matter how much he aired it out. Her phone buzzed with unknown numbers. Messages. Threats disguised as concern. She'd been punished before for speaking up. Jobs lost. References vanished. Doors closed without explanation. This could cost her everything. Her shift, her rent, her fragile stability. But silence had already cost a child. The next afternoon, Stephanie sat across from Melanie Chen in a closed office, hands folded tight in her lap. The chief leaned forward slightly, voice calm but unyielding. "I need the full recording," she said quietly, "and I need you to tell me what happened at Hampstead Mansion." Stephanie didn't rush the story. She laid it out the way you lay out fragile glass. Careful, steady, knowing one wrong move could shatter everything. "He started running a fever on a Monday," she said quietly. "By Wednesday, he was dizzy. He kept asking why everything sounded far away." Melanie Chen didn't interrupt. She just listened. "Randy wanted to take him in," Stephanie continued. "But Michael Bain kept saying they'd call a private specialist first. Someone discreet. No waiting rooms. No paperwork that could circulate." Flashbacks flickered between them like silent film. The boy on the couch at Hampstead Mansion, cheeks flushed, small hands pressed at his ears, Randy kneeling, snapping his fingers too close to the child's face. "It's fine." Randy insisting, forcing confidence. "His fine." Michael's voice cutting through it all. "We handle this internally." Days passed. By the time they stepped into the hospital, the symptoms weren't early anymore. They were advanced. "The records show a rapid onset," Melanie Chen said, glancing at a tablet. "They were edited," Stephanie replied. "Language softened. Timeline compressed. Not a janitor accident. Not chemicals. A delayed emergency." Silence stretched across the office like a held breath. Melanie Chen finally asked a question that always comes. "Why didn't you report it sooner?" Stephanie's hands tightened together. "Because people like me don't win those fights," she said. "I'd seen it before. Speak up, and suddenly you're difficult. Or unreliable. Or unemployed." She swallowed, and I didn't have proof until I pressed record. Her voice steadied. "In this country, people talk about responsibility," she said softly, "but the powerful call it optics." A sharp knock broke the moment. An officer stepped in, phone in hand. "Chief, Randy Bain's attorneys are filing for an emergency injunction. They are trying to block the recording." Melanie Chen didn't blink. Then we moved faster. The shift didn't happen loudly. It happened in statements. Sponsors began to pause partnerships. Board members quietly stepped away pending review. The hospital released a carefully worded message about ongoing internal evaluations, then edited it twice within an hour. Port Washington had always admired the Bains. Their donations built wings, funded galas, sponsored marina cleanups. But admiration turns fragile when doubt creeps in. Alice Nelson stopped answering Randy's calls. When reporters asked for comment, she said only, "I believe in transparency," and left it at that. Charles Manuel scheduled a meeting with personal counsel just to understand liability. Billy Yates scrubbed her social media of photos taken under crystal chandeliers at Hampstead Mansion, captions about visionary leadership disappearing one by one. And Hampstead Mansion itself, once a symbol of legacy, looked different now. The iron gate still stood tall. The hedges were still precise. But camera vans idled along the curb. A local news reporter did a stand-up across the street, voice steady as she said the words allegations and recorded evidence. Neighbors at the marina lowered their voices when the Bain yacht passed. Conversations cut short. Eyes lingered a second too long. Inside the mansion, Randy paced across imported marble floors, phone pressed to his ear. "This is being twisted," he snapped. "You know my father. You know our contributions." Across the room, Michael Bain remained composed, advising strategy like it was another board meeting. "Control the narrative," he said evenly. "Limit exposure. Contain her." But Randy's anger had shifted. It wasn't dominance anymore. It was desperation. That night, his message to Stephanie appeared on her screen. "Meet me tonight. Alone." She stared at it for a long moment before typing back. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." They met in a quiet municipal conference room. Neutral walls, humming fluorescent lights, a long table built for negotiations that usually ended in signatures. Randy arrived first. No cameras, no entourage, no Alice Nelson, no Billy Yates, no Charles Manuel. Just him, and a leather folder thick enough to suggest solutions. Stephanie Miller walked in alone. She didn't sit. Randy slid the folder across the table. "This doesn't have to destroy everyone," he said carefully. "A settlement, a relocation package, a non-disclosure agreement. You can start fresh somewhere else. A new life." Stephanie looked at the folder like it was something fragile and unnecessary. "I didn't come for your money," she said. "I came for the truth." Outside, events were already moving without his permission. Police Chief Melanie Chen had issued subpoenas. Hospital intake logs were under review. Private communications were being examined. Donations that once insulated reputations were now footnotes in a larger inquiry. At a podium outside the Port Washington, NY, United States Police Station, Melanie Chen spoke plainly. "This investigation will follow evidence, not influence. No raised voice, no theatrics, just accountability." Randy watched from a distance as a world he'd always navigated with ease grew narrower. Calls went unanswered. Invitations stopped arriving. Even the silence felt different now, less protective, more exposing. The next morning, Stephanie returned to work. Same mop cart, same polished floors. But her posture had shifted, no longer careful to stay invisible. She saw the boy once more in the hallway. He hesitated, then smiled. She signed softly, "You're safe." And maybe that was the point all along. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you how easily blame falls on the person with the least power, then subscribe as a way of standing with stories like Stephanie's. Not for entertainment, for witness. Because silence is what people like Randy count on, and presence is what people like Stephanie survive on. He screamed, "You made my son deaf." But what broke his empire wasn't her answer. It was the truth he couldn't buy back. If you love this story, don't just scroll away. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from, and which part of the story hit you the hardest. We've got more powerful, emotional stories coming your way, and trust me, you don't want to miss them.